Hello, pattern readers. I was not planning on doing a video this week, but Entertainment Weekly and the Wheel of Time show had different plans. That's right, I could not miss getting in my reaction and analysis to the photo spread and article in the September 1st issue of Entertainment Weekly. The physical copies of that magazine are available starting now, August 20th. And they were leaked a little bit early, so the photos are making the rounds online on Wednesday, August 18th. And then EW posted them with an article online. So excellent chance you have seen these already, but I will be sharing them in their high-res form, getting into all the details, talking about the kinds of fan reactions I've seen, and as always, fitting it into my speculation for season 1. And these photos are gorgeous enough that we cannot look at them enough, right? Before we get into the spread, I want to say that most of this video is going to be spoiler-free discussion because I do want it to be accessible to someone who's maybe just learning about the show and hasn't read the books. And then after I do that, I will include some discussion of details and speculation that involves book spoilers. But I'll warn you at that point, so feel free to watch spoiler-free until then. First thing to note, on the cover of this issue, right up top, this is the teaser for the article. First look, is The Wheel of Time TV's next Game of Thrones? And I actually wanted to comment on that first, because I think there are going to be mixed reactions to any Game of Thrones comparisons. Some of you might already be bristling and objecting to the idea that the show might try to be the next Game of Thrones. So I want to give my take on what I think that kind of comparison means and what it doesn't mean. A little context. I loved Game of Thrones as a show for 6 seasons. I defended some weaknesses in season 7, thinking they would work it out in the final season. And then I was horribly disappointed in the ending of season 8. So I think that makes me like a lot of fans of the show. I have read the books, but have given up on getting any more. And I've always loved the Wheel of Time book series far more. So that's just a little bit of my perspective. When someone in entertainment marketing says that something could be the next Game of Thrones, I take that to mean the next breakout fantasy series. By any measure, Game of Thrones was hugely successful. And it's honestly the reason why a lot of shows like The Wheel of Time are currently being made. So having a show be as popular to a broad audience as Game of Thrones was is a goal that any show would love to achieve. And that's honestly what I mainly think these types of headlines are getting at. If we are lucky, The Wheel of Time could bring in countless new viewers, like Game of Thrones did, and some of them would eventually become book readers as well. It could be talked about broadly and convince some people to check it out who might otherwise have skipped it thinking it was not for them. It could capture a significant chunk of that audience that loved Game of Thrones and wants more, and something that ends well, let's be honest. Not that it's going to be something that some people could dismiss as dragons plus nudity, not that it would have the same tone or style or themes. The article itself points out one major difference, in that in The Wheel of Time, women and female characters are far more prominent and powerful than they are in fantasy such as Game of Thrones or even Lord of the Rings. If you want more on my discussion of what the similarities and differences are between these two series, I have done some videos on that, so check those out if you'd like. Now for that first image, a shot of all 7 of the main cast, and I'm going to work my way through each of them, starting in the center with Rosamund Pike, who plays Moraine. Quoting the accompanying article here, as a member of the Aes Sedai, a female-only mystic order, Moraine is a master at channeling a magical force called the One Power. The article doesn't really get into this, but there are also factions among the Aes Sedai called Ajas, and Moraine is a member of the Blue Aja, and her costume reflects that affiliation. Another important note on her costume comes from the designer, Isis Musenden. These are not just a bunch of princesses swanning around in pretty dresses. These are women doing jobs. They're taking care of the governance. They're taking care of the healing. This speaks to the practicality of the costumes we see here, not only for Moraine, but for all of them. When a short teaser of Moraine was accidentally posted by the German Prime Video account, and fans got a small glimpse of part of this costume, there was a lot of criticism towards it for looking too modern and too simple. But I think seeing it here with all of its pieces and in much greater detail, it makes far more sense. There are both modern and historical influences on these costumes, which is fitting considering that this is a world where time is circular and ages repeat. The current time is post-apocalyptic, and the technology is not recovered. But in the not-too-distant past, prior to a catastrophe known as the Breaking, the land had experienced a technological and political pinnacle. And so these costumes reflect the fact that this is not your stereotypical medieval-type fantasy. She appears to have both a cloak, which likely has a hood down in the back, and signs of wear at the bottom from travel, and underneath a more structured coat with shoulder detailing, fingerless riding gloves, and boots. It is hard to tell whether she wears trousers or divided riding skirts as described in the books. Perhaps one thing that will stand out most to book fans is this ring on her finger, which is large but hard to see in great detail, but is almost certainly an Aes Sedai Great Serpent ring, which denotes their affiliation with the White Tower. Next to Moraine is Lan, played by Daniel Henney. Lan is Moraine's warder, a man sworn to an Aes Sedai and magically bonded to her. He is an intensely skilled and trained fighter who provides her with protection and service. There are risks and benefits for both Aes Sedai and warders in this bond, the specifics of which are guarded as secrets to those outside the orders. The cord that Lan wears on his forehead is called a Hadori, and it denotes that he is Malkiri, a child of a lost nation of Malkir which was destroyed by forces of the Shadow, creatures and minions of an evil known as the Dark One. Lan's cloak and boots look well cared for, which is very fitting for him. The majority of his costume was inspired by traditional Korean dress called hanbok. There are many variations of this kind of outfit for both men and women, including more traditional and more modern variations. But this is fitting for and perhaps inspired by Daniel Henney's South Korean heritage. As the article explains, Moraine rescues a handful of young villagers after monsters attack their community of Two Rivers. Moraine is the guide figure in this world, as explained by Rosamund Pike. They don't trust her, but she is the mysterious stranger who comes into town and changes their lives forever. They leave with her on a journey that will either save or destroy humanity. The article also explains that Moraine encourages her new female traveling companions, Egwene, Madeleine Madden, and Nynaeve, Zoë Robins, to explore their mystic potential. So let's look at those characters for a minute. Nynaeve Almira holds the title of Wisdom in her village. She is the most important woman in the community, equal in standing to the mayor, and she leads the women's circle. A Wisdom also provides healing and can listen to the wind or provide forecasts for weather and crops. It is extremely unusual for a woman as young as Nynaeve to hold this role, which speaks to her talents. Book fans will immediately notice the impressive braid worn by Zoë Robins because it is an iconic feature of her description. Nynaeve is short-tempered and is often seen with a firm grip on that glorious braid. Nynaeve is also extremely dedicated to her people and willing to go to any lengths to protect them. Her costume of a long, belted green coat seems to feature woolen trim and lining, which is very fitting as the Two Rivers is known for wool production, and many of its residents are shepherds and farmers. I love the detailing around the collar and on the belt. The skirt we can get a glimpse of underneath also has some lovely woven detail. Let's shift to Egwene Alvir, played by Madeleine Madden. She is the youngest daughter of Bran and Maren Alvir. Bran is the mayor of the village, and both of her parents run the only inn. I think the fact that Egwene's attire has a little more style than the rest of her friends is probably reflecting that slight difference in status. I'm really intrigued by what seems to be a combination coat and cloak that she is wearing with the wide belt and sleeves. Her boots and skirt also have more detailing. Egwene also wears her hair in a braid, which is expected for women in the Two Rivers once they reach an age where they are old enough to marry. I think we can also see a lot of eagerness and determination in Egwene's pose. She is, of all her companions, the one most eager to see the world outside of their isolated community and to learn and to prove herself. Going back to the article, it explains that Moraine suspects that one of their male cohorts may also possess the spark, or the ability to channel the one power, and could be linked to the long-lost messiah known as the dragon. Only she's not sure which of the three. Let's start with Matt, short for Matrim Cawthon, played by Barney Harris, who looks very appropriately roguish, I would say. Matt is the son of a farmer and horse trader, but he himself is known as the town prankster, and his sense of humor is often getting him into trouble. Matt thinks of himself as someone who's looking for fun and to avoid responsibility, but his actions can tell a very different tale. There are also some spoiler-related reasons that might explain some of his appearance here, but I'll save that for my spoiler discussion. In any case, he looks like he has taken less care of his clothes and even has less concern over how he wears them than the others. Then we have Randall Thor, played by Josha Stradowski. He's wearing a striking shearling coat, very appropriate for the son of a shepherd and farmer. His clothing looks much better tended, which I think reflects his upbringing. He was raised by his father, Tam, after his mother, Kari, died young, and Tam is one of the most well-respected personalities in the community, who would certainly have taught Rand to be responsible. He also gifts Rand the sword we see him wearing here, which has a story behind it that's very unusual for someone from the Two Rivers. Rand and Tam are also unusual in that they live alone on a remote farm, and Tam has not remarried. I'm a bit curious that Rand is wearing chaps when the other men are not, but perhaps this was a practicality to help with him wearing a sword. Last but not least, we have Perrin Ibarra, played by Marcus Rutherford. Perrin is the village's blacksmith apprentice, and his physique and temperament are well suited to the profession. A fitting detail I like in his costume is the decorative metalwork on his tunic, belt, and pouch that you don't see on the other costumes, though he also has the touches of wool that seem to be characteristic of a Two Rivers style. Perrin is known for being a careful thinker, someone whose large size has taught him to be cautious and wary of hurting others, but he has a passionate side as well that he often keeps tamped down. Let's move to this image, which gives us a lot more to talk about for the characters of Rand and Egwene. We can see the closeness between the two characters here. Although not officially betrothed when the books begin, they both believe they will marry each other someday. The look that Rand is giving Egwene here is so expressive, and the admiration and the focus he has on her with a hint of a smile. She, on the other hand, looks very serious. Either her thoughts are inward or else she is considering something off-screen that we can't see yet. This view also gives us a better look at her costume. We can see that she wears pants beneath her skirt and the embroidery detail on her top, gold threadwork in the skirt, and a more ornate belt buckle. In this next image, we get another view of Moraine and Lan, where she seems to have collapsed and he is carrying her. We also get sight of their horses, Aldib and Mandarb. The article tells us more of this particular setting as well, Shadar Logoth, an infamous abandoned city, which is haunted by such dark energy that even the monstrous Trollocs hunting our protagonists fear to tread there. Showrunner Rafe Judkins explains, "We literally built Shadar Logoth from scratch, just for 15 minutes of airtime, because it's that important to the series. That's where it becomes very clear it's not just the forces of good and evil. There are lots of different angles." This statement of his also gives us some real insight into how much care they are giving to bringing this world to life. The last image is perhaps the most intriguing. We see the character of Logain, played by Álvaro Morte, in a cage after he's been captured by several Aes Sedai. The article fills in some context. Logain is a rare man who can channel the One Power. Lifetimes earlier, both men and women were able to access the magic, but an evil, known as the Dark One, tainted the male half. Now, any man capable of mysticism is hunted by the Aes Sedai and stripped of his abilities, a process that can turn fatal. Logain can not only channel, but powerfully so, and he has declared himself as the reincarnation of the dragon, a long-lost messiah. Aes Sedai who know that men who can channel will eventually go mad from using the tainted male half of the power do everything they can to stop men like Logain, ever since the Breaking, when insane male channelers nearly destroyed the world. Quoting the article again, "Just as men are often trying to shut down female power in our world, Aes Sedai are trying to stop this man from becoming too powerful," says Judkins. If, hypothetically, one of our male characters were able to use the One Power, they would understand the stakes of it from what they see of Logain. From the power and controlled rage we see in Logain's stare, we see that he is far from cowed. His disheveled hair reflects his state of captivity, but his clothing is rich and may even show part of an embroidered dragon on his collar. Despite his captivity, he does not look afraid, but the Aes Sedai, for all their power, are wary of him. The most prominent Aes Sedai we see is Alanna, played by Priyanka Bose. Like Moraine, she wears her Aja color, in this case green. She also wears leather arm bracers, which may be a nod to the green Aja also being called the battle Aja. Her prominently displayed ring looks much the same as the one Moraine wears. Even though she is also dressed practically for a journey, I love the detail in her hairstyle if we look close. Next to her is another powerful member of the Green Aja, Kareen Nagashi, played by Clare Perkins. Although it is hard to see, I would guess that Kareen is dressed a little more decoratively, which likely shows that personal style dictates a lot of what Aes Sedai wear. The Greens are also known for bonding multiple warders, and we know from casting that Alanna has at least 2 and Kareen at least 1. In the background, we see 2 other Aes Sedai dressed in red, almost certainly continuing a trend of Aes Sedai dressing in their Aja colors. These are probably members of the Red Aja, who devote themselves to hunting for men who can channel to protect the world from that threat. Red Ajah, perhaps surprisingly given their mission, refused to bond any borders. Neither of these two appear to me to be the one member of the Red Ajah that we know will appear in Season 1, Liandrin Sedai, played by Kate Fleetwood. I know some people disagree on that, but they really don't look like her to me. So we will have to wait and see who these turn out to be. I want to include one more quote from the accompanying article, but be sure to also either click on the link that I've included in the description or go out and buy a copy for yourself to check out the whole thing. They mention that a second season has already been ordered. In fact, it's currently being filmed primarily in the Czech Republic. And it's all based on an already completed 15-book epic series, so there's a wealth of material to draw upon. But in order to get to that ending, they are going to have to bring in more than their existing diehard fan base. I try to stick to the spine and the heart of the books and bring that to the screen, Judkins says of his philosophy as showrunner. If I can successfully do that, the story and the characters will sell themselves. Rafe Judkins also answered a few questions he got in response to the article, and I will share a spoiler-free one before I end with some spoiler discussion. He was asked about giving Matt a beard in the show, and he sort of answered it indirectly, but in a very interesting way. We aged up the Emmons Field 5 from the books because sometimes TV shows with a bunch of 17-year-olds as leads feel more like YA, and Wheel of Time isn't YA. He makes a good point because sadly, teenage protagonists often lead people to dismissing something as YA, and it would just give people the wrong idea of what to expect from the Wheel of Time. From here on out, I will be going into some details that I have glossed over because I could not do them justice without getting into book spoilers. So if you haven't read the books, please leave me a like and a comment, and I hope to see you next time. But now, book fans, let's get into some more controversial stuff. On Matt's beard, I've seen a number of people complaining about that, but it seemed pretty obvious to me, and we even have a clue to support this idea, that this image is of Matt after he's already taken the Shadar Logoth dagger, and its effect on him at that point would make him care way less about his appearance and taking care of himself, and not shaving is a really easy way to show that, so I think that's what's going on here. I also love the subtlety of Nynaeve wearing green, a favorite color of Lan's on her. And the skirt of hers that we can see is yellow, pointing to her Ajah color. If you are a hardcore fan freak like myself, maybe you already know that there was actually metadata attached to these photos. And from that, we know that this photo was related to episode 106, and this is in a meadow near a waygate where we will also see Loyal. This photo was apparently taken on July 15th, 2021, which indicates either it was done as part of pickup shots or else it was just a day for a photo shoot, specifically for the magazine. Honestly, either way, this is not a still from the show. It's definitely a shot only for EW. And that can also explain some of the other details that people were calling out in these photos, like Perrin not having an axe. I can't imagine that Perrin is not going to have a weapon in the show, and there's really no reason for it not to be an axe. And if we look back at the photo of Matt, he appears to be wearing a quiver, but there's no bow. And so I think we just need to keep that in mind, that this is a photo from a photo shoot, and so there's going to be things that are in the scene that are not in this shot. And yes, there are also people who want to complain about nonsense like actors' heights not exactly matching book descriptions. And honestly, I just don't care. Do I think they should have only auditioned actors for Rand who are exactly 6'6" tall and naturally redheaded and 20-something years old and who cares about acting ability? No, I do not. And don't even get me started on people who are actually complaining about the placement of particular characters in the scene and who's in the middle and who's on the side. Come on. Anyway, the metadata for the other photos tells us that this image of Egwene and Rand is from episode 1, and it seems to confirm a story I covered previously about Egwene perhaps doing initiation into the women's circle. This Shadar Logoth image is from episode 2, Shadows Waiting, so that 15 minutes of those scenes will be in that episode. It also says Lan is exiting the temple, so perhaps Moraine will still be exhausted from the channeling she has been doing when they have to escape Shadar Logoth. And the metadata from the Logain photo seems to be an error because it references a scene from episode 3 with Perrin and Egwene on the Caroline Plains when they see wagon tracks like the Tinkers. That photo, which we don't actually have, is listed as also being taken on July 15th, 2021, so maybe it was also part of pickup shots, or that's just the date of the photo shoot and is also an error. Rafe also gave 2 other interesting spoilery answers to questions. He confirms that we will see the world of dreams in the show, saying, "How could you do the show without it?" And when asked whether we will see Forsaken in season 1, he says it depends on how much you know about the Forsaken. So that says to me two things. One, we're not going to have a direct fight with the Forsaken like there is at the end of The Eye of the World. And two, there will be Forsaken somewhere in season 1, disguised somewhere, somehow, and it might even be tricky for book fans to spot them. It still leaves open the possibility that we could have Ba'alzamon in some fashion, because he isn't revealed to be a Forsaken right away and fashions himself as the Dark One. But I honestly don't think that's very likely either, just because I don't think he would have answered the question that way unless it's more subtle than it is in the books. I could see that Rand's ability to channel could be revealed in a different way, and a fight with Forsaken saved until he has learned something. I've been advocating for fewer Forsaken in season 1 and fewer battles with Ba'alzamon, so I'm not upset by this. The Forsaken could be just a hint of menace at first until they gradually become more real. I could honestly go on and on. This was such a fun reveal. But what were your thoughts on these photos and the article and Rafe's answers? Leave me a comment and please share this video, especially for anyone you're trying to interest in the series who hasn't picked up the books yet. We're closing in on that end of summer window for a trailer, so be subscribed and turn on notifications. I'm really excited for how much there's going to be to discuss. And until next time, gird your loins, my friends.